Hello, hello, hello. It's Brent Leary, and I'm just admiring the combination of this hat, the color of the hat, and the darker hoodie. This kind of looks good. I'm really happy about that. Anyway, I'm sorry why I admire my Rams wardrobe. Brent Leary, and this is the first few good minutes of the week, or I should say, it's the first like streamed few good minutes because I've had some pretty good minutes this week already. But this is going to be a special one because I got a chance to talk to Don Schuerman. And yeah, recognize how I said that. You'll know why. But before I bring it on to talk about, well, what else are we going to talk about? Some agentic AI. I'm assuming we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Before we do that, this is a special time for a few good minutes. And you notice it is Thursday. It's a Thursday afternoon. And usually what happens on Thursday afternoon is CRM players. And that is still going to happen at 3 o'clock Eastern this afternoon. Matter of fact, we are really going to have some fun because our guest for this week is Heather Willems. Now, some of you may not know her, but if you go to some events like Ray Wong's Constellation CCE event, or if you happen to check out our CRM Players IRL 2025 event, you would have noticed as the keynotes are going on and speakers are speaking and people are talking and all that kind of stuff. Off to the side, there was this young lady who was actually listening to what was being said and taking what she heard and in real time visualizing, right, drawing it out and really bringing the words to life. And we call it Heather Willems is the person who does that. And we specifically were so happy to have her come to our event and do that for our speakers and all that. We actually did something we called the Heather Cam, which was we had a camera dedicated to her as she was hearing what was going on from the keynote stage. We had a camera dedicated to just watching her visualize in real time. We will be breaking that out, by the way. We're going to be, because it was recorded, of course, because it was streamed. So it's really cool to see her bring the words to life or visualize the words. So she's going to come in and join us to just talk about how did she get that kind of skill set? I mean, we have a little clip that we'll be playing of her doing it in real time, and it's all sped up, sort of like the Benny Hill. Well, maybe not the Benny Hill version, but just a sped up version of her doing it. And it's just really, it's really fun. So, and I already have a question for her. I can't give it to you right now. You got to come back at like 3:30 ish and hear it, because it is. Once you've seen her do this, I don't know if she's ever had this question come up before, but I'm going back to load. Oh, I don't want that. I want to go to this. Man, I got all sorts of buttons going on here. I want to remove this. There we go. All right. So that's coming up at 3 o'clock. But right now, I have my our buddy, because it's the venerable Paul Greenberg and my buddy. And we recently had him on CRM Players. And it was funny because he didn't really know he was going to be on the CRM Players until he saw the promo I put up, apparently, which that's only half the story, because apparently the venerable Paul Greenberg didn't know that Don was going to be joining us until he saw the promo. So it was kind of an interesting moment for all of us. But he knows he's on now, and we know that because we tried this yesterday. So we're going to try this again today. It is the Chief Technology Officer for Pega, Don Schuerman. And he's here.
Brent, I'm so happy to be here. You know, the challenges of going back to the office. Evidently, who thought that getting connected when you went back to the office was actually harder than being connected when you were back at home?
Maybe they just don't like people that don't like Boston sports teams. I don't.
Oh, that must have been it. Our net ops people must have detected your Celtics animus and used it to block the video feed for a little bit.
Yeah, so I am very glad that you're here and you're able to see and hear me today. So that's we're cooking with gas here, man. But it's always a pleasure to have you join me or us, because you kind of ping pong back and forth between a few good minutes and CRM Players, and we like that.
I do too.
All right. So, you know what? We're going to talk about some things that you guys just announced yesterday. But before we do, because it's kind of a segue, kind of. Last week I had I thought was a really good stump the Godfather. You notice I have to take a second before I say stump, because sometimes it kind of sounds like I'm saying stomp, and I really don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want to stomp. Yeah,
you don't want to stomp on the venerable Paul Greenberg. So last week stump the Godfather. I'm gonna play this. I don't think you saw it. And maybe, you know what I might do is I'll play it and then I'll stop it to see what your answer is before we get the actual answer. So,
all right,
are you game for this? All right, here we go.
Absolutely.
Let's try this out.
You know what else it goes back to?
Lotus Notes.
And now it's time for Stump the Godfather with the venerable Paul Greenberg.
We're going to make this a quick one.
Yeah, really.
Because our guest is in the green room. I could see him. Oh, he's giving me that. Yeah, we're good. All right, so this week's Stump the Godfather brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. Gartner predicts within 4 years, at least blankety blank 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 percent of day-to-day work decisions will be made autonomously through agentic AI, up from basically 0% in 2024. Our guest in the green room is going big. 50%.
Really big.
That's pretty big. Cynthia is saying 55%. Michael Klein is saying, what is this? Price is Right again?
No, he's Yankee uniform.
Oh, Ron Guidry. J.R. Clark is saying 38%. Monique is saying, wow, 60%. Jeff McDonald is going with 35%. Tony is saying 55%. Phil Bruni, 61%.
I'm going exactly with Jeff McDonald at 35.
10%. Okay, Ben is sneaking in. 37. All right. Wow.
All right, I had to stop there. There's a lot of guesses.
We had a lot of guesses.
And before we give you the answer, we would love for Don to give us his guess on this particular question.
I was going to peg myself at around 40%.
40%. So you're like kind of in the middle, because it went from like
there was an extreme range of like 60%, but you know. Yeah, the other thing is I'd love to figure out where Gartner, derives these numbers from. But like, and if they come up with some odd number that's not like just a multiple of 10, but like 42.7%, I'm going to be a little suspicious. But I'm going to say 40.
All right, all right. So let's do the quick answer so we can get on to the conversation. So let me start this back.
Oh, wait a minute. Did Sven already guess, or was that a new? The answer to this week's Stump the Godfather question. We never get a drum roll. We need a drum roll for this.
No,
all right,
no, we don't.
You guys are way off base. 15%.
Oh, yeah.
15%. Are you surprised it was that low?
Not necessarily, because when we've done a little bit of our own kind of surveying of employees, and while I think there's a lot of enthusiasm around using agents, there's also a lot of uncertainty about how much of the decision making do you actually want to leave to the agent, and how much do we want to leave to the human being, right? And I think I also think that the question really becomes, and this maybe is a nice segue into what we're going to talk about, which is how much can you make it so those agent decisions and agent actions are predictable and explainable versus some of the natural sort of unpredictability and randomization you've gotten from a lot of large language models. So I think the big question becomes getting that to the point that it feels like something that fits within the predictable constraints of operating in a regulated enterprise.
So let me ask you, a question. How does Pega want to handle that thing?
Yeah, so we kind of think that in a lot of cases, the best thing to do with an agent is to actually get an agent to follow a workflow, to get an agent to actually follow the laid out best practices that a business has agreed to, that oftentimes a business has certified with a regulator or certified with a compliance team. And that rather than relying on just sort of free-form prompts, which an agent won't necessarily follow with any degree of predictability, if I can use a workflow to tell an agent exactly what steps to follow, I get predictability but I also get the power of the agent to be able to navigate that workflow, explain that workflow in different channels, interact with different people across that workflow. And that's not to say there won't be agents that maybe do a little bit of reasoning on their own. But I think for a lot of the use cases that an enterprise has, they don't want the agent figuring it out every time. They want the agent following the best practice that the enterprise has defined. The other thing that we happen to be pretty excited about is, I've been on here before talking about Pega Gen AI Blueprint, which has really allowed us to use AI to define workflows really quickly. So you can get a workflow defined in just a couple minutes. Well, I can now write a workflow for an agent as fast as I can write a prompt for an agent. So why wouldn't I want an agent following something that is predictable and repeatable rather than a prompt that it's going to interpret in different ways every time it runs?
So you guys announced Pega Agent Experience. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So this goes back to, for a while, we've had a capability that we call digital experience, or we sometimes refer to it as DX, that allowed us to take a workflow and use a workflow to dynamically power a set of front ends, right? So that capability basically allowed Pega to have a workflow and have that workflow actually be embedded inside a series of Salesforce screens, for example. So I was running Salesforce screens, but it was actually a Pega workflow behind the scenes powering it all. So that was for digital experiences. What we've done with Agent Experience, or Agent X, is we've essentially made it so that any workflow becomes instantly agentic. So I can actually have a workflow power an AI agent, basically by the workflow providing a series of metadata and information to the agent that allows the agent to discover that the workflow exists, because the first thing the agent needs to do is find the workflow, and then get guided by the workflow through all the different things it needs to do. So we think this is pretty cool, and we think it allows a lot of our clients to take the oftentimes hundreds of Pega workflows they already have and instantly turn them into agent experiences and conversational experiences.
So last year at Pega World, it's hard to believe it's already been nine months or something like that. It's almost time for Pega World again.
It is. Those of us who work on Pega World are already deep in the soup, Brent.
Okay. Well, while you're in the soup, I hope you have some crackers and some things that go with the soup. But the big news back then was Blueprint. And I recall, I had a chance to actually build my own Blueprint and the tech hub you had there. But yeah, I remember talking to you in the midst of all that. And I think during the course of Pega World, about a couple thousand blueprints were created by customers that are there on the scene. So blueprints were a big thing. How do blueprints and this Pega agent experience, how do they work together to help customers get a better understanding of not only what this is, but doing all this stuff?
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what, Brent, you are going to segue, and I'm going to just show this to you guys. So give me just a sec here. We go over here. All right. Can you guys see my blueprint dashboard here?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. So this is Pega. Whoop, I don't want to show you that. This is Pega Blueprint, right? So I've got a whole bunch of blueprints that I've built. I'm going to go into one that I've already built just so that we can move a little bit faster through it. But this is a blueprint for ski resort management. So the way I built this blueprint is I told Blueprint I wanted to do something in the consumer services space. I said I was going to go into hospitality and travel. So I selected hospitality and travel. And then I told Blueprint I want to build a ski resort management app. And I gave it a description. I said, I want you to manage the customer service operations of a ski resort, including things like getting lift tickets, renting equipment, changing dates, booking accommodations and lessons, etc. I'm about to head off to Colorado for a week next week. So this was front of mind, right? And I even said, pretend you're building this blueprint for Vail Resorts, right? Full disclosure, Vail Resorts isn't a Pega client, but I said, for this example, we'll pretend we're building for Vail. And what Blueprint did is it came back and it said, by using Pega's internal model, some of our own best practices, calling out to large language models, it came back and said, great, I'm going to need to have different workflows and case types in this blueprint. So you're going to need to purchase lift tickets and rent equipment and change your dates and book accommodations and maybe schedule some ski lessons. Make sense?
Yep.
The other thing Blueprint did was it actually figured out what the workflows, and it's actually reevaluating and making sure that it's got the most accurate definitions at any given time. But it goes through and it actually figures out for each of those case types that I have, not just the case type itself, but what is exactly the right workflow. So what are the steps that the workflow needs to go through? If I were, say, purchasing lift tickets or renting equipment, right? So here's the equipment rental, right? Or scheduling a lesson.
And so far, you've done all this by basically pointing and clicking on things.
I've done all of this simply by saying, I want to build an application for ski resorts, and Blueprint has figured this out for me automatically. Like it laid this out for me. I didn't have to design anything. That's the magic of what happens when you combine Pega's workflow model with some intelligence that's buried in these large language models.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to edit what Blueprint suggests, I could go in and add additional steps or remove steps from the process. But this process that you're looking at was what Blueprint selected, gave to me 30 seconds after I put in my little description of I want you to build a ski resort app.
And let me, before you go any further, so last year you announced Blueprint and you could do certain things and capabilities, but how has Blueprint itself progressed over last year to the point where what you're demoing is what you're doing as opposed to what it was maybe 6 months ago?
Yeah, so we've been putting new features, new capabilities in Blueprint almost every week, right? Mm-hmm. So in fact, I'll show you a couple things that didn't exist when you saw Blueprint at Pega World. One of the things that didn't exist when you saw Blueprint is we added this ability for you to define when you've got a new case like ski lessons, what are the pieces of information you actually need to actually get a ski lesson scheduled and start it? So notice I've put in certain things are required to start this ski lesson, like the date and time, the type of lesson you want, and how long you want the lesson to be, right? What that now allows us to do is just based on the fact that we understand the case type and we understand the underlying data model of the case type, I can jump in and actually preview what my ski lesson does, right? So, here's my ski lesson sign up. I can look at this in like a Pega application. So if you notice, it's asking me when's your lesson date and time, what type of lesson do you want, how long do you want it to be? But I mentioned, we can also run this whole case inside of Salesforce, right? So we've added the ability for you to preview what that experience would look like running this workflow inside of Salesforce. Now, this is the stuff that we've just added with agent experience. So the other thing I can now do is I can actually talk to my workflow, right? So I might say I might like to get a lift ticket. Great. And it actually agentically is now dynamically guiding me through the workflow. So that's pretty cool, right? For a workflow that I literally took 2 minutes to build. So now here's something I think is pretty slick. Not only can I chat with this workflow, I can call it. So I'm going to get on my phone here.
Please enter your 6-digit Blueprint voice preview code. One moment while we connect you to your Blueprint voice preview.
That's interesting.
Sure. How can I assist you today?
I'd like to rent some skis.
Great. Could you please let me know your level of skiing ability, the type of equipment you need, the quantity, and the start date for the rental?
I'm a beginner skier. I need to rent skis.
Got it. You're a beginner skier. What type of equipment? How many pairs of skis would you like to rent?
Just one.
And when would you like the rental to start?
Tomorrow.
Would you like the rental to start today, Thursday, February 13th, 2025?
No, tomorrow, please.
Thank you. I'll arrange the rental of one pair of skis for a beginner starting tomorrow, February 14th, 2025. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Can you just remind me everything you just did for me?
Of course. I've arranged for the rental of one pair of skis for a beginner skier starting tomorrow, February 14th, 2025. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Can you describe what you did for me, but in German?
Natürlich. Ich habe für Sie ein Paar Ski für Anfänger reserviert, beginnend morgen am Freitag, den 14. Februar 2025.
Right? And the cool thing is, because this is all actually running as a workflow in Pega, if you noticed on my screen, we're tracking everything the agent is doing. And we're aligning it against known steps that flow through the workflow. So like we think it's pretty cool that now you can blueprint a workflow in minutes. And within minutes of doing that, literally be talking to your workflow.
Yeah,
Right?
I love this. This is really interesting.
Like this to me is the really exciting capability when you combine sort of what's going on in large language models and agentic AI, and then you hook that up to workflow orchestration. We think you get something pretty cool. So the voice preview I showed you is a little bit something we're working on. It's a little bit of something that's behind the scenes, but the ability to chat with the workflow and actually type in your text chats, that's in Blueprint today. So if you go to pega.com/blueprint and put in your email address, you can design a workflow in minutes and then have an agentic chat conversation with it pretty instantly.
This was really interesting. And the other thing I noticed, because I was watching the chat as she was talking, and I don't know if this is done purposely or not, but when you said you wanted it tomorrow and then you asked her to repeat it back, I noticed in the text it says, this is a rental for Friday, February 14th. It didn't say Friday. She just said tomorrow. It was really interesting to catch up. Well, she's not necessarily reading directly from what the text that got created. That was really interesting.
That's the power of this, right? And the thing that's really, as we've played with this, the thing that's gotten really powerful, right? Because there are lots of organizations that have hundreds of workflows that are available. And not every customer or every employee knows exactly the name of the thing they want to be able to do. But what we can do with agentic AI is say, hey, I need the classic example is in banking, you do disputes to your credit card, right? Well, I don't think a lot of consumers know actually the technical term of what a financial dispute is. But what they can do is they could talk to an agent and say, hey, there's a charge on my card I'm really concerned about. And the agent can dynamically figure out oh, yeah, that's the dispute workflow. Let me get you walk through that, right? We're using the agentic AI to be smart enough to do the mapping, but we're then using the workflow the same way a workflow works with a human agent to make sure a human customer service agent does exactly the right thing. It's now making sure the AI agent is doing exactly the right thing.
One other thing that I picked up on that you said, and I think is really interesting. You said this capability, this 1-2 punch, it really allows the user to focus more on the workflow and not on becoming some kind of prompt engineer. Could you explain what the importance of that?
Well, yeah, because I think, if those of us that have been playing with large language models a lot, the prompt engineering is a really subtle, and I would say it's more of an art than science. You can get very different responses from a large language model depending on how you phrase your prompt, how you use it, what model you're using on the back end can change how it interprets it, which is great if you're trying to do creative things. It's great if you're trying to do some writing, or you want to maybe to generate some images for you, or like we do with Blueprint, you want it to recommend a starting point for a workflow definition. I love that. When I have an agent that I actually want to get a piece of work done, and say not a ski resort, but say a bank that's trying to onboard a new commercial customer where there is a whole bunch of global regulation that bank needs to follow, I don't want the agent depending on how it interprets a prompt to figure out what steps it does. I want the agent to follow a workflow that I've laid out where I know it's going to do A, B, C, D, and if necessary, F in order to get this thing done. And this allows us to not be dependent on the prompt, but to get to the workflow, which has a higher degree of determinism in how the agent behaves.
Yeah, I think that's. I hope people really latch on to that, because I think that it really opens up, for this to be something that's more readily accessible and easier to use for people who don't want to be a prompt engineer. You just want to get your stuff done. I think that's a really good point.
And we hear a lot from our clients, and again, we talk mostly to pretty large enterprises, that they like this excitement around AI and around agents, but they got to make this stuff follow the rules and the compliance auditors and all the regulations that these large enterprises deal with. And this provides a way for us to fit the power of agentic into the predictable operation that an enterprise depends on.
So, Don, when is all of this available? Is it already available, or when will it be available?
So like I say, you can go into Blueprint today, build a workflow, and experience chatting with it. The voice call I showed you is some stuff we're working on. Hopefully that'll be out in the next couple of weeks is what we're looking at. And then we plan on making the full set of these capabilities available in Pega Infinity 25, which will probably be out in the second half of the year. So, this is pretty exciting stuff. And I have to say, it's a super fun time to be in the tech space, right? Because the possibilities, if you had told me 2 years ago that I would be talking to a workflow in German, right, I would have said you're crazy, but I am. And how cool is that?
Yeah, it's really good. And I'm assuming there's going to be some more interesting, fun, cool, slick stuff that you might want to be dropping around Pega World, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like there's a lot of cool stuff that we're working on, but we're also, frankly, you got to keep a couple tricks for the big stage. So we are making sure. So folks who are interested in this and really want to get your hands dirty and see the latest and greatest, and not just, I love the fact that you came to Pega World and didn't just see a Blueprint demo. You actually built a Blueprint yourself, right? If you want to come and have that hands-on experience, Pega World, which is June 1st through 3rd at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, you can check out pegaworld.com if you want to learn more.
Awesome. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I believe I call it the tradition, unlike any other, the annual visit of Alan Trefler to the CRM players will be somewhere in between now and then. So I know Paul is already looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Alan usually has something 200, 300, 400 things to say that really just stick with you. And then
he generally has some thoughts and opinions on things, and he's always excited to chat with you guys, especially as we get closer to Pega World and the excitement there.
Awesome. Well, Don, thanks for making time to do this. And you notice I didn't even say one derogatory thing about the Celtics. Right?
No, well, when you've run 7 of the last 8, it's a little bit hard to say derogatory things, Brent.
Okay.
All right, but it's a pleasure. I'm glad we got through the technical hurdles up by our network and we're able to chat today.
Yeah, your guys finally let me through, so I'm all happy about that. All right, and thanks to Don and thanks to you. And remember, what are we, like 40 minutes away from the CRM players and Heather Willems and Stump the Godfather? I've got to get a good one for him before that show starts. Anyway, we will see you then. Thanks again.
Bye.